after the initiation ceremony, we were asked to go and get dakshin, and none of us really actually understood what that meant, but we were told that you just went and begged. So we went along the street, and begged, and just said, which was quite ludicrous in St Kilda, which was a very seedy part of town, and and we just said, I've been initiated by my spiritual master, can you please give something? So I got a bowl and a few items and things. So it was because it had been the installation of the deities, there was a huge feast, and I was to take the dakshin up to Srila Prabhupada. So it was after the feast, everyone was very jovial, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting, and I had made Prabhupada a gift, and Prabhupada was sitting on the cushions, and he was just sitting relaxed with this huge smile on his face. And I walked in and paid obeisance, and he goes, so what have you brought me? And I said, oh, just a little something, Srila Prabhupada. And I handed him a bowl which I'd collected in dakshin, and he went and he leant over the desk and he pulled the bowl towards him. He goes, so what have you given me? And I said, oh, just a little something. And it was an orange. He goes, oh, it is an orange. And he took everything, all the items of the bowl, he actually took out one by one. And he goes, oh, an orange. And he put the orange on the desk. And then he goes, some flowers. Oh, very nice. And put the flowers on the desk. And then he got the Lakshmi, and it was 80 cents, which was just ridiculous. And he counted this. And he went one, and it was like 4 20-cent pieces. And he goes, ah, Lakshmi, very nice. But fortunately, not knowing, we were so ignorant at the time. And so what I'd done, I'd actually made Srila Prabhupada a cartel bag, and it was all beaded for his cartels. And he goes, what is this? I said, it's for your cartels, Prabhupada. And he loved it. He goes, oh, look, this is wonderful. And he goes, Shriti Kitty Balimadan, come see what she has made me. And he brought them in to show this cartel bag. So after that, he just talked a little bit more about my service as, Didi, Pujari, looking after Krishna nicely. And then he just gave me a huge laglu. And I walked out with the laglu in my hand, and Shriti Kitty and Bali Madan were all laughing and in the other room and said, you cannot open, Prabhupada says that you can't enter the spiritual world unless you like laglus. So that was my initiation. That was the end of that particular day. So the next day, because I was now in charge of Srila Prabhupada's room, which I actually was in charge of every time he came to Melbourne, but this was my first experience of being in charge of Srila Prabhupada's room. I had made the asana cushions and helped with the Vyasasana cushions, but so I was doing the room. I was, we had, in those days, we had to change the asana cushions every day. We used to put white sheets down on the floor. And it was a bit of a production, and I was also in charge of Srila Prabhupada's washing every time he came. So, but I was just about half an hour off finishing. I still was, putting the asana cushions on, and I just finished doing that and picking up a few things, and all of a sudden they said, Srila Prabhupada's back from the morning walk. And I went, oh my gosh, he's back. I didn't know what to do. So I just grabbed everything, tried to finish up cleaning, and I came racing out of the room. Well, in Melbourne, there were 3 stairs that went up to Prabhupada's room. And onto the left of those, onto the right of the stairs was a door which used to be the Brahmacharini ashram. So Prabhupada came up the stairs, and I came racing out of the room, and I had buckets and mops and everything in my hand. And I looked at Srila Prabhupada and I thought, what do I do? How do I pay my obeisances? I don't know what to do. And then I looked at him, I looked at the mop and the broom, then I looked at the door, and then I looked at Prabhupada again, I looked at the mop and the broom again, and then I looked at the door, and I just went, and I just sideways flew into the door and closed the door and thought, oh, he didn't see me. So I just sat inside waiting for Prabhupada to pass. Well, all of a sudden the door came open. The door slowly came open, and Srila Prabhupada walked in, and he said, so, Hare Krishna. I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. He goes, so, you are cleaning room? And I said, yes, Prabhupada. And he goes, ah, very nice. He goes, so I have tricked you today. I said, yes, Prabhupada. He goes, ah. And he goes, but I said, but I think I just finished cleaning. And he goes, ah, very nice, Hare Krishna. So grateful, so gracious, but at the same time quite playful. I was very young, I think I'd just gone 16. He was very playful, like 15, 16. So he was very playful with me in that regard. And so that was the second instance I had with Prabhupada. I'd gone to get him a hat, and it was cold, it was Melbourne, it was cold, and I went everywhere to try and find a particular hat for him, but I could only find yellow wool. And it's in many pictures in San Francisco. Rath Yatra, he had it on. There's many pictures of him with this hat on, but I couldn't, and I didn't know what to do. So it was Vijayaranya and I, who was temple president in New Zealand. I'd been sent to New Zealand on just for a few months to be, well, it was actually about a year, to be Pujari after everyone had left. So that's another whole story. But so we'd gone upstairs to give Prabhupada the hat. And Prabhupada came in, he asked a little bit about how we were going with the yatra and the yatra there. And I was still doing Prabhupada's room, so he was seeing me in the daytime every morning anyhow, but just saying Hare Krishna and things. So I'd walked in, he goes, so what have you got? And I said, oh, it's just a little gift, it's very cold, Prabhupada, you might like this hat. So he went, oh, this is very nice. So Prabhupada took the hat, and you know, in India they sometimes put the hats like straight up. So he took it by the pom-pom, and he just put it on his head, but it was sitting about like this high. It was like sitting about a foot above his head. And I just kept looking at it thinking, it's sort of not really the way to go. And Prabhupada's going, this is nice? I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And he goes, yes. And I go, is this how you wear? He goes, and I go, well, Srila Prabhupada, you sort of bring it down like this. And so Prabhupada started bringing it down, and he rolled it over. And he goes, like this? I said, yes, Prabhupada, that would be very nice like that. And so he was sort of, again, very gracious, very humble, but joyful, and just sort of allowing us to sort of, in a way, instruct him. Was sort of like, I didn't know whether to say anything because, you know, that it was like ridiculous. It was sitting up here high. So I didn't know what to say, and I thought, should I say something? Because it you know, it's not going to be good in public. You're going to look like a madman. But anyway, so he brought it down, and he just liked it when I did it like this. So whenever you see him, he's got the hat and it's sort of rolled down. There's many pictures of him with that particular hat on. So he was just, again, showing how friendly he could be, how sweet he could be, but at the same time, almost childlike, that, you know, letting us sort of take care of him in that regard, that sort of, you know, not, you know, like a father would let the child put on their slippers the wrong way or something like that. That was really special. So I had got to go on this particular morning walk, and it was a very cold morning in the botanical gardens, and we were, you know, everyone always went right behind Srila Prabhupada. So we were following, and my godbrother was right next to me, following right behind Srila Prabhupada, and I was right next to him. We were right behind Prabhupada. And we were walking, and it was very misty, and Prabhupada was speaking, and of course everyone wants to huddle around to hear. But at this particular time, my godbrother stood on Prabhupada's foot, and you know, the back of his shoe. And Srila Prabhupada stopped, and he turned and he looked around, and we just went, oh gosh, you know, get back, get back. So then Prabhupada walked again, and we were walking a little bit further, and my godbrother stood on Prabhupada's shoe again. And Srila Prabhupada turned, and he looked, and he stopped for a bit longer and looked at him. And, you know, we said, come back, come back. So we continued on. Anyway, he kept walking and walking, and he did it again. He stood on Prabhupada's shoe again. Well, this time Srila Prabhupada turned around, and he got his cane, and he just whacked him firmly across the arm. And we all just jumped, and we were all so terrified to go any further at that point. We all went back about 10 feet from the distance after that. Prabhupada didn't say anything. He just whacked him with the cane. And we all realized that, you know, he will be, again, like he's saying, merciful, but, you know, you can have a few mistakes, but you're going to get it the second, third time round. And that was pretty much one of the stories. So that was a thing that was one of my favorite things with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's face, he wasn't smiling, he just was very nonchalant again, just whack. And that was one wonderful story. This particular day I'd been helping Shriti Kirti and the kitchen, and I used to help with making the milk sweets with Pera and everything. So Shriti said to me, why don't you take Prabhupada's lunch up? And so I thought, oh, I was a bit nervous about that idea, but of course you were going to do it anyhow. So I walked up, and as I was walking up, I could hear this banging on the desk, of a fist banging on the desk. and I sort of hesitated to knock on the door at this particular time. I could hear Srila Prabhupada yelling very vehemently. I won't particularly say what he was saying, to someone that was inside. So I wasn't sure, but anyway, I knocked gently on the door, and Srila Prabhupada says, "Come in." And so I opened the door, and Prabhupada immediately went into this very sweet, wonderful, gentle mood. He goes, Hare Krishna, prasadam, very nice, just put here. So I went and I put the prasadam there. And as I left the room, I looked at this particular friend that I had arranged. He'd been taken in by the schoolmaster, and, had absolutely wished I'd never arranged their meeting for him in any shape or form. And anyway, as I went out, and Prabhupada was just so gentle and sweet with me and very kind. And then as I went and I closed the door, I could hear Prabhupada's fist going back on the door, onto the desk, yelling and yelling and yelling. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I mean, he's not really yelling, he's just chastising. He's chastising so they understand the seriousness of the situation, but he's not really, he's doing it with love, he's doing it with a complete, an understanding for them, but also for them to understand how serious scriptural following is and how scriptural reference is. And so and with me, he was just, again, sweet and loving and very gentle. I wasn't in the hot seat, someone else was. So that was the situation. But it was very interesting to see how he just, immediately, the moment the door closed, he was back on banging on the desk and back to being his fiery self. Like, they always say that Prabhupada was like I think Radhanath Maharaj was saying he was like a thunderbolt or a soft rose, and he was being the thunderbolt. But, the moment I opened the door, he went to the rose and then went right back to the thunderbolt again. So it was very interesting to see. It was all for our benefit, not that he actually felt anger. So this particular time, I'd opened the front door, and I'd forgot to give Prabhupada the flowers, and there was a wild kirtan going on. In Melbourne, there's stairs that go up. There's about 10 stairs up, and there's a small landing, and then there's another 10 stairs up. So the kirtan had gone, and it was going on, and Guru Kripa had stopped Srila Prabhupada, asked him a question, and Prabhupada was on the top, just about 10 stairs up on the landing, and I was down the bottom of the stairs. And he turned and asked Prabhupada a question about something about his suitcase. And Srila Prabhupada, answered him. And then he glanced down and saw me with these flowers at the bottom of the stairs. And Prabhupada walked back down the stairs to take the flowers out of my hand. And I just was like, I just about fell over, of course. And he was just so sweet. The fact that I was there, I held, I'd sort of got involved with the whole movement of him, but just that the fact that I was still willing to give some offering to him. Any offering that we did was special to him. Any small thing, it was just a little couple of flowers, gardenias and jasmine and whatever. But he came down and grabbed them out of my hand and said, Hare Krishna, and sort of marched back up the stairs. And I just was sort of flabbergasted that he would be so sweet and so caring to worry about such a small significant gift. And that was any small significant gift that you gave, it was appreciated in magnitudes. And so that always was amazing to me. He was superior in every single way. The other thing I was just thinking about was, and his memory of what you have done and not done was actually quite instant. He understood who everybody was and what their place was, and he was well aware of every devotee. And this was sort of a bit poignant, as I thought was one of the last things I actually talked to Prabhupada or asked him about was in a lecture. And I'd been concerned. I was, because I was doing so much service on the deity situation. I was chanting massively as well, but I wasn't getting a lot of time to read. And it was in class, and I said to Srila Prabhupada, what's the most important, hearing, reading, remembering, that whole shebang. And Prabhupada said to me, and he looked at me, and he goes, hearing. And it brought me right back to my first instruction of Prabhupada going, listen, when he was doing Gayatri, and I thought, oh my gosh, he was absolutely exactly what I was saying. He sort of brought it right back. I will remember that you weren't listening when you were taking Gayatri, but he brought it back. So he just knew everything that was going on within you personally. He understood so it was like I was sort of being chastised that I wasn't listening again. But it was a very clear instruction. Hearing was the most important. But then I went on to understand that hearing's chanting, hearing's reading, hearing's everything, that association, it's all there in one word. And so I think with Prabhupada, he's just eloquence with everybody. He could talk to anybody. He could talk to the general, to a child. He could talk to a student. He could talk to a teacher. We saw him teaching, in Australia. The priests would come. We would see them go to the room, and he would talk, and we would go in and listen as Prabhupada would be explaining philosophy to them, and so eloquently and so brilliantly, but with some compassion that also showed understanding of. It wasn't just understanding of Veda or Vedic, philosophy or Krishna consciousness or whatever. He understood all religions, and he could approach them in that particular way. I think that was one of the most astounding things. He knew how to actually answer any question and anybody, and saying even just to the reporter asking in the movie, the Hare Krishna movie, what is a hippie? I mean, perfect. Prabhupada was the perfection of one-liners, I think, as well. He just had such a sense of humor, but just it finished any misconception that you had. That one-liner could eradicate any doubt that you ever had. Je anilo premadana koruna prachu